every video that I make, the comments are always full of the word grinta. And I'm like, what on God's earth does this mean? I sat down, I done some research. Grinta in Italian means grit. And you know what? Shout out every single person that was commenting it under my videos, because now I know exactly what you mean. You're right. When people sit down and say Juventus, they lack grit. These players, they lack grit. Thiago Motta as a coach, he lacks grit. He lacks courage. He lacks character, strength, personality. Players that can go out there, get the job done. They can take on all the abuse. They can handle the big occasions. They understand what it means to put on a Juventus shirt. Grinta. Look at that. I now know 3 Italian words. But you guys are spot on. And a lot has happened in the past few days when talking about Juventus. Thiago Motta, Giuntoli, the players. A lot has happened. A lot has been said. Let's talk about it. Now, I've gone back and watched Thiago Motta's post-match press conference from... let me not remind you guys of tough times. That embarrassing, that difficult to watch performance against Empoli, where Juventus dominated the ball and done nothing with it. Where Juventus came up against a team that put out their B team. Why? Because they don't care about the Coppa Italia. They care about survival in this Serie A. So you came up against the team fighting relegation. You came up against the team fighting relegation. They put out their B team because they literally told you from the first minute, we don't care about the Coppa Italia. And you still lost. So let's see what Thiago Motta had to say. Now, the first question that he was asked was, how do you assess this approach? There are no explanations. This is undoubtedly my responsibility. Today I am ashamed to see my team play like this. I am ashamed. In the first half, we lacked the right attitude, which means I failed to convey the importance of this match whilst wearing the Juventus shirt. So in other words, he means I struggled to motivate the players. I struggled to relay the necessary information to these players and explain to them the value of a Juventus shirt. Explain to them the importance of getting through to the Coppa Italia semi-final. The importance in general of winning in a Juventus shirt, regardless of the opposition, regardless of the competition. He then goes on to say, I am ashamed. Mistakes can happen in passing, but in the first half, no one took responsibility and we played the ball back to the goalkeeper 20 times. We lost the ball and stood still. I apologize. The people who came today were even kind to us because we deserved much more than what we heard today. This is my team's analysis. I am ashamed to see this, and I hope my players feel the same way. Demanding without giving anything in return applies not only to football, but to life in general. Now, he said a lot. I'll be honest with you guys, he said a lot. I feel like he takes accountability. Now, that's one thing I like about Thiago Motta. He takes accountability. When it goes wrong, he's the first to put his hand up and say, I got it wrong. But sometimes I feel like he says a few things where I'm like, you're saying the wrong things. But he takes accountability, and you could see he was embarrassed. He was ashamed by that performance. And I feel like as a coach now, he's under a lot of pressure. Because Juventus were on a 4-game winning run. But then to be knocked out of the Champions League, to be knocked out to Empoli, with those performances, with the star-studded starting 11 that was put out there, everyone is looking at Motta. And you know what? This is the perfect clip.
Loro devono sapere che siamo qui alla Juve e qui si deve vincere. È molto semplice. Quando tu non sei in grado di farlo, prendi la valigia.
Now let me translate that clip for you. As you guys know, I'm a fluent Italian speaker. What Edgar David says is, at Juventus, you must win by all means necessary. If you can't, pack your bags and go. Now, I feel like it's definitely harsh to look at Thiago Motta and say, you should have won the Scudetto. You should have won the Supercoppa. You should have won the Coppa Italia. We need to just remember a few things when speaking and looking and judging Thiago Motta. Number one, he is a very, very, very young coach in a very competitive industry, managing one of the biggest clubs in the world. Now, the biggest clubs in the world, it doesn't matter whether they're going through a transitional year, whether they're in their banter era. Massive clubs across the world, they always have a few things in common. You must win. Demands, expectations, standards. Carry yourself correctly, and this applies to the manager, to the players, to the board members. Juventus at the moment, they're not what they once were. But fans still have the expectations of decades ago. They still have the expectation, the demands, the standards of a team that was winning Scudettos, of a team that was winning title after title after title after title, a team that was getting to Champions League finals. And in their eyes, going into the stadium, being sat at home, watching games where their team loses to Empoli on penalties. Why on God's earth is that game even reaching penalties? And that's where the criticism of Motta is warranted. And I'll be honest, as a coach, from looking at his comments, he's ashamed. He really, really, really is. Because he knows that defeat has had a massive dent on his resume. Because everybody's now looking at him and saying, you've got the stars. You had the recruitment. You've got training. You see these players every day. Why couldn't you motivate them? And I'm a firm believer in your players on the pitch are a representation of you. Just the same as your captain that you handpick is a representation of you. If I sit down and watch a game of football and I see there's a team that's got grinta, come on, we might as well make use of the Italian words. If a team has grinta, if a team has fight, it has passion. All of that passion comes from the manager, because they represent the manager on the pitch. If I'm sat watching a game and I see a team that lacks passion, they lack fight, they lack motivation, they're clueless in the final third, I sit down and tell myself, this is all from the manager. Because if the manager can't show these players, if the manager can't motivate these players, if the manager can't tactically drill these players, if the manager can't give these players the solution to problems on the pitch, then you have to look at the manager. Now, the second question he was asked was about the boos directed to two summer signings in Nico Gonzalez and Coop Miners. Two players that have come under heavy criticism this season, and rightfully so. Why are Juventus fans going to lower their standards just because they're new signings? Because I can guarantee you guys, the minute you start lowering standards and expectations, because he's a new signing, because he's come from a foreign league, because he's young, that's the beginning of the decline of your beloved club. What did Thiago Motta have to say? The crowd was kind to all of us. We deserved much more than what we heard today due to the wrong attitude and approach to the match played in Juventus colours. It is not a pleasant feeling. In fact, it's very unpleasant. The demand for a team like ours is to win. Today, that did not happen. We completely failed the match today. Once again, he sounds ashamed. If you go back and watch it, he looks ashamed. He looks distraught. And I feel like deep down, he is annoyed. He is really, really, really annoyed with these players. He also goes on to say, today we lack the attitude of a true team. No one can say that they gave their all today. I am ashamed of what I saw in my team. It is unacceptable to approach a football match like this. This is entirely my responsibility because I failed to convey the importance of playing in such a match whilst wearing a Juventus shirt. I couldn't do this before the match, and that is unacceptable. Now, like I said, he takes accountability, and that's something that you want in any individual in life, a colleague, a family member, a friend. I admire, I appreciate somebody that takes accountability and puts their hand up and says, I was wrong, I got this wrong, I am to blame. He's taken accountability for that performance, but he took accountability for the defeat in the Champions League where Juventus got outfought, outmuscled, tactically schooled. It was an embarrassing. It was one of the most embarrassing performances I've seen of a Juventus team in the Champions League. And he took accountability for it. And I feel like fans across the world now are sitting down and telling themselves, what more do you need in order for this project to live up to expectations? In order for this project to pick up, what more do you need? Because the recruitment has been there. Training on a daily basis, it's been there. What more? Funnily enough, Cristiano Giuntoli, he also done an interview just a day after the Empoli game. Let's hear what he had to say. We believe in this project that started this summer. One that creates value by giving young players opportunities. And we are confident it will bring us great satisfaction in the future. However, we remain convinced that the project is on the right track. Numerous injuries have amplified the difficulties, but we are aware that we are on the right path and believe it will bring success in the future. They are the first to acknowledge that they must do more to secure a Champions League spot. Now, come on, we all know Juventus, they must secure Champions League for a lot of different reasons. Juventus is a team that belongs in the Champions League, but secondly, financially. the bonus, the package. It rewards the manager or a club. Juventus need to be in the Champions League. And Juventus, as much as they might be in the top 4 at the moment, I feel like when you look at the performances, when you look at the fact that throughout the course of the season, this is a team that has struggled to score goals. And as of late, it's a team that's been leaking opportunities, conceding goals. I don't think any Juventus fan looks at this Juventus team, looks at Thiago Motta and says, we're confident in you securing top 4 from now up until the end of the season. And in my humble opinion, and I've always said, I am Thiago Motta's biggest of advocates. I loved what I saw of his Bologna team. And when I saw the rumours and I saw he was on the verge of signing for Juventus, I was over the moon. I was like, this is the right appointment. Give this man the keys. Instill that trust. And he will take Juventus back to the glory days. Now, I'd be a liar if I turned around and said to you guys, that's what it's looking like. Because I'll be honest, he's disappointed me. He really has. And it's mainly because he's a manager where I now look at his teams and I see a team that's clueless in attack. I see a manager that tactically at times is making the wrong decisions. I see a manager in the game that's struggling to tweak it. For me, in game is the perfect opportunity for any manager to change the outcome of a game. You can change the outcome of a game on the 80th minute by making a triple substitution. You can change the outcome of a penalty shootout by changing your goalkeeper before the penalty kicks are taken. How many times have you seen that in the past? Managers, they change their goalkeeper last minute before the penalty shootout. As a manager, you have this luxury. You have this opportunity to tweak things, to change things. You can go into every game, different formations, different play styles. There's so many ways to tweak and change things and bring that necessary favour that you need. But where the problem is now, and Thiago Motta mentioned it, is it wasn't a tactical problem against Empoli. It was attitude. It was hunger. It was commitment. It was grinta. Come on. Keep the Italian words coming. And I feel like when your team lacks attitude, when your team lacks character, when your team doesn't understand the importance of representing and wearing a Juventus shirt, as much as we might sit down and say all 25 players are to blame, you have to look at the coach. Because as a coach, you need to hold these players accountable. As a coach, your job isn't just to coach them on the pitch. It's to guide them through representing Juventus. As a coach, you need to hold them accountable. I will mention that one once again because I feel like he hasn't held them accountable this season. I feel like the fact that so many players have been underperforming yet starting week in, week out. So many players that I felt like were ready to offer this team something. Like I will forever mention Fagioli. Fagioli was always a player that I looked at and said, he can do better than what Coop Miners is doing at the moment. He can do better than what Douglas Luiz is doing at the moment. But he got let go. These players weren't held accountable in the slightest. And I feel like now you've got players that start week in, week out, that fail to live up to expectations, that fail to perform, but they cost a lot of money. And they continue to start the week after. And there's a reason why performances are not the most consistent. When you look at Juventus tactically, started off the season amazingly, but now do we see the 3-2-5 on a consistent basis? No, we don't. Do we see a Juventus team pressing relentlessly? No, we don't. Do we see a Juventus team that's at least comfortable playing out of the back when the opposition try press? No. So I feel like Juventus fans across the world are now sat looking at Motta and saying, our season is practically over. But have we made a step in the right direction in terms of development of youth? I don't think so. Have we made a step in the right direction in terms of development of our overall style of play, our brand of football? No. Nobody can turn around and say Juventus are one of the most entertaining teams to watch at the moment. If anything, Juventus at times, they come across very boring. So I feel like now people are beginning to ask harsh questions of Motta, but they're necessary. They're warranted. Now, in my opinion, from now up until the end of the season, it's Thiago Motta's audition. It's an opportunity for Motta to show all of the things that he said he couldn't do in the past. He couldn't get these players to understand the worth of wearing a Juventus shirt. He couldn't motivate them. He couldn't tactically set them up. He couldn't give them solutions to the problems when coming up against teams that want to sit back. From now up until the end of the season, Juventus have one game a week. So that means after each game, they've got 6-7 days to recover, to train, to work on the things that went right and to work on the things that went wrong. From now up until the end of the season, it is Thiago Motta's audition. And I feel like the outcome of his season will all be based on whether or not Juventus secure top 4 or not. In my opinion, Giuntoli will always come out and publicly back Thiago Motta. Just like any employer, you don't come out and publicly downplay or publicly criticize the person that you've employed to manage your team. He will always come out and publicly say, we believe in Motta, we believe in his project, we see the benefits. But I feel like deep down he sat telling himself, elimination to Empoli's B team, elimination in the Champions League playoffs. What more does this manager need just to showing me something? And even if he does start to show you that something, is that something of the quality of winning a future Scudetto? We don't know. Is that something worthy of winning a future Champions League? We don't know. I feel like if Motta wants to be at Juventus next season, by the bare minimum, he has to have top 4 in the bag. Because in the summer, when it comes to the negotiation table, you can always turn around and say, listen, it's been a tough season. My first season managing a top club like Juventus. I lose my best centre half. Injuries left, right and centre. New recruits that don't live up to it. Games quick and fast. But I still got you top 4. I feel like at the end of the season, if he turns around and says, no top 4, knocked out to Empoli, losing the Super Coppa, no Champions League, I feel like Juventus will definitely look at him and tell themselves, if there's a better manager out there that's available, we will cash in and we will let you go.